Humanity stands divided. Let's talk about racism, shall we? Racism is a topic we're all very familiar with today. With the amount of news on hate and crimes we see on our news feeds, we are no longer a stranger to the reality and existence of racism. What we all commonly know is that there's racism when people express how much they dislike a certain person or group just because they are of a different race or culture. But really, racism is more than just direct hatred and is actually part of a much bigger problem. What most of us don't know is where does racism even stem from? How deep does it go? And why does it even happen in the first place? In simplest definition, racism is a belief that race itself is a direct determinant of human traits and capabilities. That the person's physical traits are directly correlated with certain specifics in personality, intellect, morality, cultural, and behavioral features. This then leads to the idea of stereotypes and produces the inherent problem in belief that certain races are therefore superior to others. It has been a long-standing issue, deeply rooted in self-interest, made evident from as far as the conception and stories of slavery throughout world history. It continues to prevail because of those who do not speak out against it, and it will continue to stay if people refuse to empathetically look at the bigger picture and never step out of their environments surrounded by racist tendencies and beliefs. In much more recent times, deeply rooted racism continues to make strong headlines regarding consecutive violence and police brutality cases against African Americans in the United States. Another stems from the racism associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, allegedly being dubbed the Chinese virus by the US president that caused an uproar of violent and murderous crimes against Asians all over the world. The international movements Black Lives Matter and Stop Asian Hate in response reflects how much the problem of racism has brought about countless crimes and problems that have threatened the safety, rights, and even lives of affected human beings. Racism really is a matter of how much people are willing to accept others of a differing race. It profoundly relies on how the act and presence of racism is tolerated in a country, and it widely varies in each one. Some countries may not even realize that something is racist due to the lack of exposure to diversity, or even traces of a much more complicated history that expose it to too much of it, just like in some of these cases. As Filipinos, we too experience instances of racism as OFWs suffer racial injustices, of exploitation and trafficking. Outside of the country exists the stereotype of all Filipinos being immediately equated to as mates or caregivers in many countries. Yet, within the country also exists a strong foundation of racism that has greatly affected the Philippines in beauty standards and classicism throughout its years. Influenced by European historical colonizers, Filipinos have become too fixated on fair skin, which is opposite to what is native to many Filipinos, as a golden standard for beauty, class, and even respect. These can be repeatedly seen for years in the media, from choice of celebrity idols, where darker-skinned actors are often used for comedic purposes, and the market that pursues an endless selection of whitening products. Thus, it has been culturally ingrained in the minds of some Filipinos that lighter skin is synonymous to a higher status, and those who don't make the cut are ridiculed. CST and action. The Catholic Church actually has specific doctrines on issues like racism and on what people can actually do about it. The first encyclical is Gaudium et Spes, which talks about the dignity of each and every human being. As creatures created from the image of God, we all have dignity, since it means that we are also called to be in communion with Him. Thus, as people of God, we are also called to treat others in respect of their dignity as a human. As Luke chapter 6 verse 31 even puts it, "Do to others as you would have them do to you." It encompasses the idea of being against any kind of social and cultural discrimination, racism being highly included as it is against God's design. The second encyclical is Octogesima Adveniens, which is an apostolic letter that tackles the importance of participating in social and political reform for the sake of common good and justice. This most especially in examples against legislations or systematic behaviors that induce the likes of racism. Essentially, in these church doctrines, they remind us that we are all created equally as children of God and share equal dignity, which should always be upheld with respect. Micah chapter 6 verse 8 indicates, what Jesus stood for and the Bible teaches is justice, pursuing what is right according to what God says, not what society and people say. With problems such as racism, the best thing people can do is to remove ignorance. In justice and love, we as human beings must fight for the rights of the oppressed and contribute to the common good, not just with what we can as individuals, but also as communities in improving conditions where it is needed the most. In James chapter 2 verses 8 to 9, it states, like Jesus who recognized differences, we need to reach out to people without distinction as to economic status, ethnicity, or gender. We are not to show favoritism. As Christians, we are called to act upon injustices such as racism and not just tolerate the issue as mere passerbys. What now? Now we are aware that the Catholic social teachings focus on dignity, the common good of the community, and the importance of participation as applied in dealing with racism. But as citizens and as children of God, who know better about the situation of racism within our community and all around the globe, what can we specifically do about it? The answer can be broken down into 4 easy steps. First is that we must listen. We begin by understanding those who need to be heard. Becoming aware of things is the first step in becoming fully aware of what is happening. Second is to learn. Even if you cannot fully live out what they have gone through, it is most important to at least learn from it. By being humble and teachable about the different experiences of others, your perception and comprehension of the problem becomes even deeper. Third is empathy. This is where we stand and share the feelings of another person. Rather than sympathy and pity, we begin to realize the bigger picture of racism that is not only theirs but a part of ours and the whole system as well. Fourth is to lead. Once you have gained enough awareness and understanding, it is time to go forth and take initiative in addressing the problem in literally any way you can. For every kind of initiative that influences others in gaining awareness about racism and also taking action against it is already a step closer to lessening the gap of ignorance present around the world.